Hello and welcome to a special author event with Caro Soles. My name is Mark Leslie Lefebvre, and I'm honored to have in the virtual bookstore here with me, Caro Soles. Caro, welcome.
Oh, thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
I am thrilled to have learned you are an award-winning author as of just yesterday or the day before. IPPY Award. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, finally, as opposed to simply being, nominated for this, that, and the other thing, which is also lovely. I finally won something, and I just heard yesterday. It's an IPPY Award. It's given by the Independent Publishers Association or something. I'm afraid I can't remember exactly what it's called. But, and it's for my book, Dancing with Chairs. There it is. And they go by regions, I think. And this is for Eastern Canada from, Ontario East, which is kind of fun. So that was a great, fun thing to sort of wake up to yesterday. And I'm still sort of floating along on it today. So that's fun.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. That's really exciting. Awesome. So you're going to treat us with a reading tonight. Can you talk a little bit about what you're going to be reading from?
Yes. Tonight I'm going to be reading from the latest Merculian novel, which is out. There it is. The Colony Dancers. And it is a little bit different. It, too, is a Marlowe mystery of a sort. But unlike Marlowe's Dance, it isn't completely his point of view. It's not a police procedural, which the other one technically was. So this one is quite different. It's a troupe of children's dancers arrives on the scene, and everybody's very excited because they're extraordinarily good. And the section that I'm going to read is the opening section where the children arrive. But there is something odd about these children, which they soon discover. And then the whole rest of the book is basically sort of figuring out who they are, what is it that's odd about them, and why they are being so very carefully watched and guarded all the time. Anyway, so that's the section that I'm going to read tonight.
Awesome. Well, why don't we get into the reading, and I'm sure I'm going to have some questions afterwards.
Alrighty. Okay, I was going to read two, but I think maybe one would be sufficient just to give you the general idea. So I'm going to read the section, which is the opening section, actually, where the children arrive. Everybody's all very excited. Everyone in the Merculian capital was talking about the colony dancers. Even those like Marlowe, who were not as mad about dance as his compatriot, were intrigued by all the hype, the contrast between their sweet, childish faces and their accomplished professionalism, as shown in all the dance clips that were broadcast everywhere. It was the first time the Merculian children from the colony were coming to visit their home planet, and their every appearance was already sold out. Comte Marlowe Bogardini was in charge of security for the event. It was supposed to be an easy job, since he had only just reported back for duty after a lengthy absence due to a work-related injury. But now, standing on the glass balcony beside his lover Callian, he was beginning to wonder. He hadn't expected such a huge turnout, for one thing. Below him, packed 3 and 4 deep, were Merculians of all ages, laughing and talking and carrying flowers and ribbons wrapped around messages. The whole avenue was lined with welcome signs and large party balloons filled with confetti. "Quite a crowd down there," remarked his Terran female friend Boothby when she arrived. She was wearing high-heeled boots, which made her tower even more over her Merculian friends. "Thanks for inviting me." "Callian's place has the best view," Marlowe said. "All this for a couple of dozen kids?" She obviously didn't get it. "Merculians love children," Callian said, slipping an arm around Marlowe's substantial waist. "And dancing," Marlowe pointed out. "So, dancing children hit the jackpot, right?" From their vantage point, they could just make out the glittering spaceport far in the distance, where the company had landed about an hour ago. As they watched, a column of children swung into the street, marching 2 by 2, and headed towards them up the wide avenue. The crowd broke into frenzied cheers. Hand in hand they came, all dressed alike in high-waisted lace tunics with short full skirts, white leggings, and shiny red shoes. Their long curling hair was caught back from their shining faces with a bright red comb, the rest so long down their backs they could probably sit on it. "Holy cow," Boothby exclaimed. "They're so cute. Do they ever cut their hair?" "Our children don't cut their hair until they're older," Marlowe explained. Boothby hadn't been on Merculians that long, and he kept having to explain the strangest things to her. But at least she was finally accustomed to the use of he to translate the pronouns referring to them, even though they were all hermaphrodites. "So it's sort of like a puberty thing?" she said, still watching the children as if mesmerized. Marlowe nodded and pulled out his high-powered glasses to study them. The rest of the group, all adults dressed in dark blue, were moving quickly to walk on either side of the children now. The baggage floats followed behind. A band wheeled smartly into place at the head of the little procession, instruments gleaming in the sunshine as they played a jaunty tune. The children quickly switched enthusiastic people in the crowd flung flowers and message bundles, causing a momentary confusion and a wavering of the line of children. They were obviously not prepared for this custom. Marlowe saw the blue-clad caretakers snap their fingers and clap, and the children fell back into place. Well trained, he thought, but he wondered how they could hear anything over all the crowd noise. Marlowe was doing one more swing across the crowd with his glasses when an explosion shook the balcony. Screams and shouts shattered the air, and the music stuttered away in confusion. Boothby grabbed him and pulled him down just as another explosion rocked the balcony. Through the glass floor, he saw the crowd below try to scatter, pushing and shoving desperately to escape the confines of the street, but they were packed too tightly in the narrow space. Then he saw some familiar faces, moving like eels through the panicked group, all heading against the flow. "Ah," he said, "so that's it." He pushed Boothby away and hauled himself to his feet, relieved to know what to do. "It's okay," he said. "It's not serious." "Well, it sure looks serious," cried Boothby, jumping to her feet. "It's not. Anyway, I'd better get over and soothe the colony people. They're going to be upset." Down below, it was utter chaos. People were pushing and shoving, trying to get away from the smoke. The children's caretakers had closed ranks around the kids, and they were fast disappearing down the avenue, their way cleared by Elle's unit. Marlowe saw some of his other people herding the crowd back to the open areas around the port where there was more space. Boothby was about to leap over the balcony when Marlowe grabbed her arm and shouted, "No, no." "But I can see over everybody's head down there," she cried. "I can help." "Relax, it's just Big Stendy using a diversion to cover his pickpocket cruise at work," Marlowe said. "I better go and explain to the colony people." He hurried down to where he had left his regulator hover bike. He rarely used the thing, and it took him a moment to remember how to start it. Then he almost fell off when he turned a corner too sharply. He eased off and headed up to the colony group, using side streets and alleys. They were almost at the theater residence when he saw them, surrounded by a whole crowd of gawkers and vidsters, their bright light halos bobbing with excitement. He slowed down, stopped, and slid off the back of the bike as gracefully as his round body allowed. "Flying farts," he muttered. He knew the group wouldn't want publicity after their frightening experience. They'd only want to get the children safely inside. They didn't know there'd never been any real danger. Marlowe held up his regulator insignia and was about to wade into the crowd when one of the colony kids burst out of the group and ran right into him. Automatically, his arms went around the child and he held on tightly. "It's okay, dear. You're safe now. It was just a small malfunction of a couple of party balloons." To his surprise, the kid pushed away, hard. He was trying with all his wiry, muscled might to get away from Marlowe and into the lane on his left. Marlowe could pick up his fear and some pain, but he didn't loosen his hold. Maybe the child was injured. Marlowe held on tighter, relieved to see one of the dark-suited guardians hurrying up to them. "Carvin, it's all right," It's time to come inside now, Corvin. There really was no danger, Marlowe assured the new arrival, who scooped up the red-haired dancer easily. I apologize for the technical malfunction that caused the noise that frightened you so, he went on. He was pleased to notice a regulator under his command wading into the Vidster group and waving them away. Corvin seemed to have slumped in the Guardian's arms. They've never been in such a big city before, the older Merculian said, giving Corvin a shake and setting him on his feet like a large doll. It's easy to get disoriented. Thanks for the reassurance, Combo Gardini. He slipped an arm around the kid's shoulders and half marched, half pushed him back to the theater residence and then through the door, which snapped closed behind them. Marlowe stood staring after them. The child was very strong, much stronger than he had expected. It rattled him how hard it had been to hold on to the kid. Of course, these were dancers, he reminded himself. They had to be strong, but the child had been very scared too, terrified more like it, and angry, really angry. Perhaps he didn't believe Marlowe when he said there was no danger. Would he even know Marlowe was a regulator? He wasn't in uniform. As a Class A investigator, he didn't wear one, and the insignia around his neck on a wide ribbon would mean nothing to the child. Marlowe shook his head, strangely unsettled. He could still smell the flowery scent of the child's long red hair in his nostrils, could still see the pale, wide-eyed face in his mind. Was there something familiar about it? Marlowe was famous among regulators for his memory for faces, but nothing came to mind as he thought about this one. So why was this face ringing a distant bell? So that's when they arrive on the scene. There's one more little short thing that I wanted to read just because it's rather fun. And somewhere around the middle of the book, there is a big wedding. This wedding has been talked about for the last 2 books, so anybody who's been reading them would be very glad to see they finally do manage to get married, for instance, Julio and Benny. And Marlowe, of course, once more, is on duty doing security. This is the 3rd day of the wedding, and during this day, these Merculian books have a lot of rituals in them, and which are important to the people, and I find them very interesting myself to do. And anyway, this is the 3rd day of this big wedding, and but it's a little smaller than the other 2 days have been. So Marlowe sort of thinks he's going to be able to relax a little bit. Everything's been going along pretty well. But today, although there would be fewer people, there would also be more aliens, including the quarrelsome Urzoi. And of course, Rio's great escape, which was scheduled to take place near the end of the day, just as the new spouses were leaving. That might be tricky. As the day wore on, the sun burned away the mist and fog and dried the ground, and by the time everyone arrived near noon, it was as if it had been the fog had never even been there. The banquet began a little late, but after that, everything progressed smoothly. Special guests, close friends of the couple, gave their gifts, singing, dancing, even air painting, all presents for the married twosome's enjoyment. And at the end, Triani appeared and performed his mesmerizing 8-minute dance tribute to Julio, danced to Benny's music, and he brought the house down, as he had expected. But unexpectedly, 2 Uzoi leapt up with a strangled hoot, nimbly jumping over the colorful barrier that had been erected to discourage this sort of thing. Smaller than the Merculians, they made up for it with their sharp, spiky forehead horns and oddly bent legs. "Us jump," announced one in a strangled voice. "Us jump high," the other one added. Marlowe buzzed his team to be on the alert. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he knew they were notorious for attacking those who did not appreciate their strenuous jumping contests. If this was a contest, it might go on a long time, and it would probably not end well. From where he stood, Marlowe couldn't tell if the caps supposed to be covering their razor-sharp horns were on or off. The music had died away. The musicians weren't sure what to do. A tall figure with wavy, silvery hair strode up and bowed to the true Tharvon Dell. His deep voice reached easily to Marlowe as he said gravely, "Do you wish a contest or an exhibition, Zilabs?" "Already we say jump league." "Ah, forgive me. A demonstration is a gift." Tharvon bowed again and withdrew towards the banquet table, where Benny was watching uneasily. Marlowe drew closer, noting that many of his team were also moving closer. And then the hairy Uzoi began to jump. And they were certainly experts. They jumped higher and higher, almost floating into the air with seeming ease, their long red ribbons around their skinny necks streaming after them, and a high humming noise becoming louder with each leap. And it went on and on and on. 20 minutes passed, and people began to stir uneasily. When would they ever stop? Marlowe located Manilo in the crowd and noted his look of consternation. This was not part of his meticulous wedding plans. Then, just as unexpectedly as they had appeared, they stopped, turned, and hopped back over the barricade to their seats. There was a moment of stunned silence, and then Benny rose to his feet and thanked them graciously. After that, the charming performance by the colony dancers was a welcome relief. Then they made their bows, and it was Rio's cue to make his escape. Except the timing was now off by 20 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you for that duo rating. Can you talk a little bit about, I know this is the 5th book in the Merculian series, but
Yes.
where and how does that fit? I'm gonna move us over so I can pop up the series. I know you've got it beside you, but yeah. So where how does this fit into the series?
It's rather interesting that it wasn't started. First of all, it did not start as a series. It was one of those things which I think often happens, that one writes a book and then you realize, these characters simply don't want to go away. So, and then of course, as a writer, I became much more interested in, okay, well, what happens when they go home? What happens after this? How are they after the terrible experiences that they've just had in this adventure or whatever? So each book in this series can be read completely on its own, by the way. So it doesn't really matter if you haven't read the others. You can sort of start anywhere you like. But naturally, like all books written about the same characters, if you start at the earlier one, you will begin to see what happens to them as they go on. They change slightly. Well, some of them don't, because they just stay the way they are. But they do change, and their relationships change, and they become stronger or weaker, or they become more so, as some people do when they get older. So there's that. But apart from that, it doesn't really matter where you start to read the books. And I guess one of the interesting things about doing this kind of a series, which is there are 3 main characters who come all the way through. I mean, there's a lot of the similar characters as well, but there are 3 main ones until we get to Marlowe, and then now there's 4. And so they are the ones who sort of carry the interest of what happens next with them. And it's 2 of them who get married, and finally in this book, having talked about it for 2 books. I mean, I think it starts, and they start wanting to get married in the memory dance, and they can't because they're a little young. So they have to wait, and they have to pull strings and all that sort of thing, because on Merculian, you can't get married if you're too young. No, I can't hear you.
Oh, I will unmute my mic to ask the question.
Good.
So you talked about Marlowe came along later in the series and wasn't a main character until later on. How did introducing Marlowe change, or did introducing Marlowe change anything in the series?
Well, yes, it does, because with Marlowe's Dance, when he arrives on the scene, it is written in a different way from any of the other books, because technically it is a police procedural. It is his point of view all the time, and his crew, his unit in the regulator unit, which is basically the police unit, they try to find out who murdered this young dancer who gets offed in the first chapter of Marlowe's Dance. And so in that way, it's quite different from the other books, because the first 2 are more like space opera. They're adventures One is that the danger dance is on a spaceship, which is going from places that, believe it or not, the dance company is going on tour on a spaceship. I guess it's sort of like a cruise ship, isn't it? In a way. So that's that one. And they have terrible things happen, of course, to them in that one, and they get attacked, and it's really bad. The Avalon dance takes place in another planet entirely, and poor old Benny is sent as the ambassador to this place, which they have not researched very well at all. And so he's not as prepared as he thought he was going to be. And of course, terrible things happen there too. Finally, in the memory dance, we finally get to Merculian, which is the first time that the Merculians finally get to be home. And we find out a bit what life is like there. And that is an alien group comes to there. And when they leave this person behind, a human man who's had his memory scrubbed, and he doesn't remember who he is or anything else. So that's what that book's all about. So by the time we get to Marlowe, as I say, this is an actual mystery. It is who killed this person.
Right.
And so that each book after that, there are 2 more books, by the way, to look forward to. And so you get in the colony dance, he is trying to find out. For a while, it's not really a case for him, but he's interested, and he has an idea that there's something wrong. He keeps sort of nudging away at it. But there are other people's points of view in this as well. It's not him. It's not all Marlowe all the time. And it's the same with the next 2, the River District, and the last one, which is the Visitors, which is the final one, I think. One never knows. Also, when Marlowe arrived on the scene, things got a lot more amusing. For some reason. The Marlowe's dance is much lighter than the others. The colony dances gets a bit darker again, but it still has a lot of amusement in it, as hopefully you can see from the from the wedding section.
Yeah, of course. And a comment from Lisa said, love the reading. And
thank you.
Lisa also has another comment and a question. She says, congratulations on your IPI. And Lisa asks the question, where does your inspiration come from?
Oh, good Lord. Well, you're a great one, Lisa, to ask that. I mean, really. I really don't know. One of the reasons I wanted to make this particular kind of person, the Merculians, their planet, I wanted a place where what is important is the arts. Okay. So they don't have sports bars. They have dance bars and song bars.
My kind of place.
Yes, exactly, our kind of place. And so and they're much more gentle, and they as Benny keeps saying, well, we haven't really been trained in aggression. They don't quite know how to do this, so they have to hire mercenaries to fight for them. And they don't want to do that, so they're fine. They seem to have lots of things to hire people with, so that's wonderful. And so that was the sort of I guess I wanted a place where arts were supreme, and everybody loves it. And they don't all, of course, can't all be singers and dancers and whatnot, but they all love to go to the performances, and they all check on who's doing what with whom and all the rest of it. So all of the gossip things are about the dancers and the singers. So it's kind of fun. So I guess it's just the kind of place that I would like to be, really.
Sounds like a place I would like to be as well.
Yeah, I think it would be fun. It's very colorful, and of course they love sort of dressing up and having a lovely time. So they are sort of pleasure-loving types, and they're quite sensual.
Well, I'm going to pop up a comment from Nancy. Nancy says, "Congrats, Caro. Fun reading."
Oh, thank you.
And one last question before we get close to the end is because it's science fiction. You talked about starting the series off with space opera, and then the last couple were more crime, police procedural, practically, but obviously in a different world. And I know you write in multiple genres, but how has that transition been within the series?
Well, first of all, I just want to warn anybody who happened to be dropping in from SF Canada, there is really no science in this. It's just really not, I'm afraid.
Apart from just the setting is not
yeah,
considered.
but I mean, there's no hard stuff about it at all. And I don't try to sort of, it's not even speculative. It's not what would happen if. It's just,
Right.
This is the way things are.
Right.
They work this way. And of course, they're technical. They're highly technical in a lot of ways, but the technical stuff breaks down periodically. And some of them don't quite know how to fix it, just like regular sort of people. And other people have to come in. And Boothby, the female Terran character, she's a crack person, technical person. So Marlowe's always calling in on her, sort of on the sly, to help out with things, basically, sort of cracking things, to find things out, because the technical team isn't quite up to it all the time. So there's that sort of thing. So there isn't really much. It's just, this is the way things are here, and you just accept it. That's all there is to it.
Sounds like a place. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, I remember with one of the books, I've forgotten which one it was. Actually, there've been several, and one of them had an SF. It was sent to an SF editor, naturally, and he was just shocked and appalled at some of these things. They couldn't possibly have a pale purple sky, or whatever it was that I said it was. They couldn't have two moons coming up at the same time. Well, yes, they can. As far as I'm concerned, they have. That's the way it is here.
It's like Star Wars science fiction. It doesn't have to make sense.
It is, exactly. It doesn't. Anyway, the poor man sort of left and wouldn't have anything more to do with me, which is fine by me. Unfortunately, he was a very good editor apart from that. But anyway.
Fair enough. Well, it's funny. Lisa says, sounds like a place I'd love to be. So it sounds like a place I'd love to be. Two moons, art spars. Like, this is just kind of like heaven on earth, right?
Absolutely. And there's lots of drugs around too, by the way. They sort of consider this a very recreational sort of thing. And it doesn't sort of, the only time they get in trouble with that is when aliens decide to sort of mix in with this, and they sort of give them the wrong kinds of drugs. And there's all kinds of problems that happen with that, which happens in the River District, which is the next one, which will be out next year. So, and that sort of thing. Sex is also a recreational activity for them. And they have a very odd sort of look at that.
Excellent. So people can check out your series. They can check it out through your website. There's links to where they can get the books, or they find them on most major retailers.
Yes. Well, all the online places have them. They're not in stores here in Canada, but they will be. You can get them online on Amazon or most of the other places, I think.
Excellent.
Yeah, and they're all in the what's it called? The Colony Dancers. The print version should be out in a week or so. I'm afraid to say, specifically, but anyway, it's coming very soon.
Yeah. Be available very, very soon. Well, awesome. Well, Caro, congratulations again on the award. Thank you for entertaining us with a couple of readings from the Colony Dancers, which is out in ebook, and the print book should be on the market.
Any minute now. Any minute.
Any minute now. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you to the live audience for your interaction and asking questions. Caro, have a wonderful evening.
And you too, and everybody else, and thank everybody for coming.
Excellent.
Bye.